Yeah, the 21st of September, and we're still here at the Henry Wellcome building, and I'm joined by Jonathan Ellis.
Hi.
From Refugee Council. Jonathan, what position do you hold within Refugee Council?
I'm the Policy and Development Director at the Refugee Council, so I lead our research, our policy and our campaigning work, and also our support to refugee community organisations.
Great. Jonathan, you've already given a talk, a compelling presentation. Wonderful. There's a lot of information that I've been jotting down. You touched on dignity, you touched on human rights, you touched on the importance of having a fair hearing, you touched on pull factor. Can you just briefly mention some of the issues that you touched on during your presentation?
Yeah, I was just trying to go back to 1948 with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the things that are universal to everyone. You know, being treated with dignity, having the right to work, the right to education, the right to life, liberty, security, and really just presenting where we are now, where we do fall short of those high expectations. And I was just trying to give a few examples. And examples might be people who are destitute, who have no means of supporting themselves, no income, no benefits, no home. And is that really treating people with dignity and respect?
No. And I understand the organisation runs some various campaigns in support of refugees and asylum seekers that applied. Are you running any at the moment?
Yeah, very much so. Yes, we are. We're an interesting organisation in as much that we both deliver services to asylum seekers and refugees, and that's very important to us. But we also campaign and lobby, and our big campaign at the moment is the right to work. The fact that asylum seekers in this country are not allowed to work, and many people don't know that. And in the media they're often attacked for taking benefits. But if you seek asylum, safety in this country, you're not allowed to work. Margaret Thatcher allowed asylum seekers to work in '86. Tony Blair took it away in 2002. And we're running a campaign with the TUC, with 20 trade unions, Bernardo's, Shelter, a whole array of different charities, saying that we should allow asylum seekers to work, to use the skills that they've got, to put it into the economy while they're waiting to hear whether or not they'll get refugee status.
If I'm right, sometime in July there was a Supreme Court ruling on that issue of the right to work, and it was in favour of the asylum seekers being granted the right to work. Yes. Do you feel it is being implemented, or is the government challenging that?
Well, yes. The Supreme Court ruling was very exciting in terms of looking at the rights of asylum seekers. I think having waited 12 months and that right to be able to use your experience and skills. The government response to the Supreme Court ruling was quite sobering, in as much that they've restricted employment opportunities to asylum seekers to the so-called national shortage occupations. So very, very small element there. And we repeat the case. In terms of recession, this is the worst recession since the 1930s. Why are we forcing asylum seekers to be on benefits? Why are we forcing them to be attacked and criticised? Why don't we allow people to work? In all of our research, all of our experience, people don't come to this country knowing about benefits, the UK benefit system, but they expect to be able to work. We published research with the Zimbabwean Association called I Hate Being Idle. We have people waiting years and years for their asylum application to be heard, doing nothing. And we heard this morning they can't even volunteer sometimes because of criminal records check. We should allow people to stand on their own 2 feet while they wait to hear whether they can get status. Surely that's a human right.
Interesting. And with the new government in place now, there's been talk in the press about immigration cap, and at times there are conflicting reports about that from the government officials themselves. What's your take from Refugee Council point of view?
Well, our take has been, ever since David Cameron became leader of the Conservative Party, I think I'm right in saying one of his early speeches was making a distinction between economic migration and asylum. And we welcome that in a political leader, to see that demarcation between people who come here for a better life and people who are forced to flee. And I think our strong message to the coalition government, which I think they fully understand, is that whilst you may have a cap for economic reasons, and I won't pass comment on that, that's beyond the remit of the Refugee Council, it's so important under the 1951 Refugee Convention that we're not restricting access. We're not restricting asylum to those people who are fleeing for fear of their life. My strong sense is that the government recognise that distinction. We're not trying to cap asylum seekers. We will give people a fair hearing if they are forced to come here, forced in fear of their life.
there's a wonderful concept that the government is pushing forward, the concept of big society.
Yes.
It sounds really positive. I've been reading it. And do you think, in terms of refugees, are they included within the big society? Do they have a say within the big society concept?
Well, that's the test, I think, isn't it? I mean, I think one could be critical of the big society, or you can see this is a huge opportunity. If the government's serious about actually making sure that everybody's included, this genuinely big society, then refugees and refugee communities have to play a vibrant role. You know, in this country, one reason that we've been successful in integrating refugees has been the vibrant role that refugee community organisations have played. So for me, the success of the big society, or one big success element or success marker, will be are refugees included. That for me will be a big test. And I have to say, whilst I'm optimistic on one level, the funding cuts that we are seeing are decimating, having a huge impact on refugee-led, community-based organisations. We're going to be publishing a survey from work with refugee-led organisations which shows the huge impact spending cuts are already having before the spending review on refugee-led organisations. And you might have a big society that welcomes refugees, but there might not be any refugee-led organisations there. You know, there has to be that financial support as well.
I think that's very important. And talking from Leicester being known as a multicultural city,
Yes.
I was thinking about the issue of big society, that it is really workable in Leicester, and that we have people from different backgrounds, and it depends now whether we have organizations that are willing to take that forward to give the refugees themselves a say within the big society.
I think Leicester is such a marvellous example of the rest of the country, of where different people of different backgrounds can come together. And Leicester's a wonderful, vibrant city. I love coming here. There's something about allowing people in this country to meet real refugees. When they read the hype in the media, they might be scared and alarmed. But when you meet individual refugees, all the evidence shows on that micro individual level, that's the way to lead to integration, effective harmony, human beings to meet human beings and to recognise our common humanity.
Going to the question of media, I always go onto your website, and I realize that there are blogs written by refugees themselves.
Yes.
And I think that's a positive way of spreading the message across. I must applaud you for that and your organisation.
And we've got Twitter now as well. So we've got a delegation of refugees going to the party conferences, and they're now commenting on Twitter. And I think at the Refugee Council it's about anything. It's about giving a platform for refugees to go and meet politicians and other leaders to express their views and their feelings. That's a very important part of what my organisation's about.
I also understand you having refugees themselves, you're taking them to the party conferences that are coming up. Can you shed a light on that?
Well, it's the first time that we've done it in a kind of formal way, but we've given people training. We had an open recruitment process, so people applied to do it, and we've registered individuals, helping them with their training, accommodation. So when we have fringe meetings, at the party conferences, we will have refugee speakers at the top table. When we have policy breakfasts behind closed doors, talking with the politicians, our refugee friends are with us. It's hugely exciting. It's what the Refugee Council should be about. That's a core part of what we should be about, giving people a platform to articulate their own views. We don't want to hear from people like me. I'm sorry you're going to say in this interview, but we need to be giving a platform for refugees and asylum seekers to give their views and experiences.
We can go on and on and on. Last question.
Okay. You're
having day trips coming up to Ashfords. Can you tell us about the day trips that are coming up?
Well,
you mentioned that.
Yes, this is our work with the Holocaust Educational Trust, which is very, very early days. Okay. But we're just trying to see whether when sixth formers go to Auschwitz and they see the horrors of the concentration camps, the horrors of what happened in the Second World War, when they come back to the UK, fueled with a sense of anger at what people suffered during the Second World War. We're interested to see whether there might be activities these young people might want to do. And the modern day equivalent, I would argue, is defending and supporting asylum seekers and refugees. And I think what the Refugee Council is about at the moment, working with anybody, is to try and create a genuine sense of movement of people who are proud to be British, but want to have a welcoming, embracing culture of people who come here for safety, for refuge, for sanctuary.
Wonderful. Jonathan, thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you.